13 countries, 6 ongoing geopolitical conflicts, 6 places where World War III can erupt at any moment in the 21st century. Brace yourself for a transcontinental journey across the 7 seas. At the end of this journey, you will have a better understanding of what 21st century world politics is all about, from the origin of each conflict to where it is heading right now. This video is based on Robert D. Kaplan's The Revenge of Geography, Tim Marshall's Prisoners of Geography, and Henry Kissinger's World Order. I am Prateek. Welcome to Eclectic. If you are someone who wants to understand your past, improve your present, and shape your future, you are at the right place. Welcome and get aboard. Himalayas, India versus China. In the last 20 years, India and China, the two most populous countries with rapidly growing economies, have gone from being two neighbors trying to understand each other to becoming fierce competitors in trade, technology, manufacturing, and global politics. China sees India as a threat to its emerging global economic dominance, while India has been steadily making important moves in the global politics. This increased competition has led to increased military tensions between the two countries along the border. Here are 3 primary reasons behind the Indo-China border conflicts in the Himalayas. Number 1. The geographical protection. The mountain range of the Himalayas plays an important role in protecting a country from any outside invasion. A country that captures the important regions in the Himalayas will gain a significant military advantage over the other. In the last 10 years, India and China have been fiercely carrying out construction projects to upgrade infrastructure to support heavy military presence in the Himalayas. Number 2. The confusion over the actual line of control. Between India and China, there is no mutually agreed line of actual control. India says that LAC is 3,488 kilometers long, while China says it is actually 2,000 kilometers long. This confusion over LAC and the presence of rivers, lakes, and the snow caps along the frontier means that the line can shift from region to region, bringing soldiers of two countries to face each other at many points, sparking a confrontation. Number 3. The water of Brahmaputra. The river Brahmaputra and the glaciers that feed India's holy river Ganga originate in China. This gives China a unique advantage over India as it can interfere with the source of water for both of these rivers. China has been building dams and hydropower projects along the Brahmaputra without providing sufficient details of the projects to India. China is 3 times bigger than India in size but has 4 times less fresh water than India. As the water scarcity worsens in both countries, the competition over the shared water resources has become another source of tension. In the last few years, the militaries of the both countries have had several skirmishes along the border. Border tensions between the India and China are mostly about not letting each other gain any geographical advantage along the LAC that could translate into a greater militaristic advantage. Geography is the primary reason here. Whoever captures the most important regions in the Himalayas will ultimately be a winner if a full-scale war ever breaks out between the two. Tim Marshall's quote from the Prisoners of Geography precisely explains this situation. All great nations spend peacetime preparing for the day war breaks out. The Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and Iran. Almost the entire Middle East is at war. Every other Middle Eastern country has been dealing with some sort of armed conflict. But currently, Israel, Iran, and Saudi Arabia are the 3 countries that are most actively engaged in such conflicts. Historically, the entire Middle East conflict has always been about 2 things: religion and oil. In the 19th and the early 20th century, most of the Arabian Peninsula was controlled by the Ottoman Empire. In World War I, the Ottomans fought alongside Germany and lost the war. The defeat in the World War I and continuous economic decline led to the collapse of the Ottomans in 1920. When it collapsed, several small tribes fought each other to rule the Arabian Peninsula. Out of all the tribes, the tribe called El Saad conquered most of the peninsula and established the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in 1932. 6 years later, they discovered oil and voila, suddenly became rich. And when you have oil, you get friends like USA. While Saudi Arabia was riding high on its oil money, on the eastern side of the Persian Gulf, another country was emerging: Iran. It had a lot of oil reserves and most importantly, it was a democratic country. I know, it is very hard to believe, but once upon a time, Iran had a democratically elected government and Iranian Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh was a beloved leader. But suddenly, the United States decided to ruin it all in 1953 by secretly staging a coup to remove Prime Minister Mossadegh. But why would America do such a thing? America loves democracy, doesn't it? But back then, you know what it loved more than democracy? oil. Today, it might have become self-sufficient in producing energy, but back then that wasn't the case, and America poked its nose wherever there was oil. In the first half of the 20th century, the British invaded Iran twice and it controlled Iran's oil for decades. But that changed when Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh decided to nationalize the Iranian oil industry and denied Britain any further involvement. Britain got pissed and asked America, "Hey buddy, would you help us here? We are kind of losing our control of oil industry here." The US was quick to respond. It took 3 decisive steps. Uncle Sam bought off Iranian press to circulate anti-government propaganda, 2 befriended Islamic clergy, and finally when the widespread protests broke out all over the Iran, they overthrew Mossadegh's government and replaced it with their puppet monarch Reza Shah. Yeah, being a dictator is fine as long as you obey America. Reza Shah did what the US and the other Western countries wanted him to do. He started aggressively westernizing Iran. While Iran was undergoing a forced cultural transformation, there emerged another country. Israel declared independence in 1948 and became the world's first Jewish state in 2 millennia. The only problem was its location. It is situated on a piece of land that most Arabs think rightfully belongs to Muslims. Jerusalem, the capital of Israel, is considered a holy place by both Jews and Muslims. For Jews, all creation began in Jerusalem, and for Muslims, it is the place where Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven. Even today, more than 80% of the Muslim countries don't recognize Israel as a country. But back then, Reza Shah of Iran thought otherwise. He thought by having friendly relations with Israel, he can have a strategic advantage over other Muslim countries and he can expand Iran's influence throughout the Middle East. Throughout the 1950s and 60s, the oil-rich Saudi Arabia, Iran under Reza Shah, and newly established Israel were backed by the United States and had friendly relations with each other until one of them collapsed. Remember the Reza Shah who wanted to westernize Iran and was in bed with the US government? It turned out that the majority of Muslim population in Iran did not like his reforms and the westernization of Iran that he was trying to achieve. People began to realize that the US was behind the coup that overthrew their democratically elected government in 1953. This was the precise moment when the fate of the entire Middle East was about to change. Iran underwent a giant religious revolution. People overthrew Reza Shah and in his place established a religious government headed by Ayatollah Khomeini. The new religious government started off by hitting the West, particularly the US. Iran immediately severed all ties with Israel and joined the long list of Muslim countries that don't recognize Israel. That's how the Israel-Iran rivalry began. While this was happening in the Iran, the rulers of Saudi Arabia got anxious. They thought, "Oh God, this revolution can inspire the people of our country to rise against us." In addition to that, Saudi Arabia is a Sunni Muslim country and Iran is a Shia Muslim country. There began another rivalry in the Middle East. Right now in the 21st century, there is a brutal Cold War going on in the Middle East. Iran's influence is on a rise. It has become friends with Iraq and has growing military presence in Syria, which has become a headache for both Israel and Saudi Arabia. Israel fears that by having a military presence in Syria, Iranian missiles can easily target Israel, and that's why Israel has been constantly targeting Iranian military bases in Syria.
Israeli warplanes fired a number of missiles. They struck the coastal city of Latakia in western Syria.
In response, Iran funds and supports anti-Israel militant groups such as Hezbollah and Hamas. On the other hand, Saudi Arabia always feared that Iran wants to dominate the Middle East and convert the region into a Shia-dominated society. Their fears came to life when a CIA report in 1980 claimed that Iran wants to bring revolution to other Muslim countries, and to do that it is helping Shia minority groups, both civilian and militant, who are trying to overthrow their governments in Iraq, Afghanistan and Saudi Arabia. These proxy wars create unpredictable circumstances that can ultimately lead to a widespread war. Iran and Saudi have ambitions to become dominant powers in the Middle East, while Israel just wants to ensure its safety. In the future, if Iran ever acquires or tries to acquire nuclear weapons, which seems to be its plan, to counter that, Saudi Arabia will try to buy nuclear weapons from Pakistan, and so would Egypt and Turkey, and Israel will keep hammering Iran's nuclear facilities with airstrikes. All of this tension can lead to a disastrous Middle Eastern conflict. If Iran ever attacks Israel, it would be catastrophic. An effectively coordinated strike between Israel, Saudi Arabia and US military forces can cripple the Iranian military and force it to surrender. but thousands if not millions of lives would be lost. The only reason Western countries hesitate to intervene or strike against Iran is that Iran has the ability to close the Strait of Hormuz, the world's most strategically important choke point. Located between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, it provides the only sea passage from the Persian Gulf to the open sea. 20% of the world's oil passes through it. If Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz, the entire world will feel the pain. This was part 1. Watch part 2 to understand 4 more ongoing geopolitical conflicts that can lead to World War III. 2 of them are being fought in Europe, 1 in Eurasia and 1 in the Southeast Asia, from why they started in the first place to where they are leading our world in the 21st century. See you in the part 2.